Colonel Arbuthnot, I do not believe we've been properly introduced.
I expect the formalities must be winked at in a case like this, mademoiselle. The attendant told me you are acting on the Frog Detective's behalf.
I am the Frog, monsieur. Hercule Poirot is Belgian.
Apologies, no offense meant. Your accent's a bit of mid-channel, difficult to pick up.
May I have your passport, please?
Of course.
Colonel Francis Gordon Arbuthnot, the Mews, Cheltenham, Royal Northumberland Fusiliers, currently stationed in India.
Yes, on leave.
But you're not traveling on the P&O boat? Why not?
I stopped in Baghdad with the AOC, who happens to be a good friend of mine.
Where did you meet Mademoiselle Debenham?
Miss Debenham? What, in Baghdad, if you must know.
And your opinion of her?
You can take it from me, she's all right. A puka sahib.
Can you give me an account of your movements last night?
Yes, I think I can. After dinner, I had a drink in the salon car with young McQueen, the dead man's secretary. Surprisingly knowledgeable about world affairs for an American, even if he had got hold of some tomfool ideas about India. We adjourned to his compartment, let me see, around 2100. That's 9 p.m. You saw us in the Belgrade station courtyard. We stepped out for a bit of fresh air, but with the weather turning foul, that wasn't on.
I will take your fingerprints now.
Will you, by Jove? Well, get on with it then.
What do you and Monsieur McQueen smoke?
McQueen doesn't, now that I think of it. A pipe's my weapon of choice.
What happened after Belgrade?
Around 2200, that's 10 p.m. Ratchet's valet came to fetch him for his employer. He went off for a while.
And what did you do after Monsieur McQueen left you?
Well, I went back to the salon car for a nightcap, didn't I? I was heading to my compartment when I ran into McQueen. Went off back to his room again to continue the natter. I put him straight on India. Learned a bit about the American stock market. Bloody fool's game, if you ask me. Oh, pardon that is to say, my language.
Do not concern yourself.
There, you see. Now I can hear the accent. It comes and goes.
What time did your discussion of world affairs end?
The conversation was so engrossing, by the time I looked at my watch, it was 1:45. McQueen called the attendant to make up his bed. I came back here.
Did anyone pass Monsieur McQueen's room while you were talking?
A good many people, I should think. I wasn't paying attention. The attendant did at one point, and I think I caught a glimpse of you wandering about.
Let us say during the last hour of your conversation.
Really, I can't.
Colonel, you have the soldier's observation for detail.
Hang on. There was a woman, I think.
Was this woman young or old?
Didn't see her, wasn't looking that way. Just a rustle and a scent.
Mademoiselle Debenham?
No, I'd recognize. That is to say, it wasn't. No, it was very strong. Fruit or something.
Can you pinpoint the time the woman passed? What were you discussing?
Let's see, I was detailing the other washout. Stalin's 5-year plan was turning out. It must have been within the last half hour. More definite than that, I can't say.
Have you ever been in America?
Never. Don't want to go.
Did you ever know a Colonel Armstrong?
Armstrong. I've known 2 or 3 Armstrongs. Selby Armstrong. He was killed on the Somme.
I mean the Colonel Armstrong who married an American woman and whose only child was kidnapped and murdered.
Ah, yes. I remember reading about that. Shocking affair. Never actually came across the fellow, but his name came up in the officers' mess, of course. Toby Armstrong. Nice fellow. Everybody liked him. Distinguished career, got the VC, Victoria Cross.
The man who was killed last night was the man responsible for the murder of Colonel Armstrong's child.
Then in my opinion, the swine got what he deserved. Though I would have preferred to see him properly hanged, or electrocuted, or whatever it is they do over there. Trial by 12 good men and true. Sound system.
Anything you can recall from last night that strikes you as suspicious?
There was one odd thing.
Yes?
As I got back to my compartment, I noticed that the door of the one beyond mine, number 16, it wasn't quite closed. The chap inside peered out in a rather furtive sort of way, then quickly pulled the door. Probably nothing in it, but you know what it is. Early hours of the morning, everything very still. The thing had a sinister look, like a detective story.
Thank you, Colonel Arbuthnot.
Not at all. Now, if you don't mind, I think I'll pop along to the salon car.
Don't let me keep you.
You mean to say you intend to stay in my compartment?
Yes.
And search through my belongings?
I'm sorry, but I really must.
But it just isn't. That's bloody irregular. Pardon my French.
I've already... I found this button from your tunic in the American lady's compartment.
I have lost no button, mademoiselle. There must be some mistake.
Then perhaps it was dropped by the man she said was in her room.
There was no one there. The lady must have imagined it.
I need to ask you some questions about Monsieur Ratchet's death.
But of course, Mademoiselle Marceau, I will do anything I can to help.
When was the body discovered?
The valet of Monsieur Rachet, he tapped several times at the door this morning. There was no answer. Then, half an hour ago, Lucien, the waiter, came. He wanted to know if Monsieur was taking déjeuner. It was 11 o'clock, you comprehend.
Continue.
I opened the door for him with my pass key. But there is a chain, too, and that is fastened. There is no answer, and it is very still in there, and so cold. The window open, I borrow the engineer's hammer, and break the chain, and go in. Monsieur Rachet was... it was terrible. The chain was fastened. It must have been suicide?
I'm sorry, Michel. A person does not commit suicide by stabbing himself 12 times.
No, I suppose not.
Did anyone call for you last night after we spoke?
Yes, I made up the bed of the young American gentleman, Mr. Rachet's secretary.
At what time?
It must have been about a half hour later.
1:45.
About that, yes. The English colonel from number 15 was with him. The colonel went back to his own compartment as I prepared the American gentleman's bed.
Did you see anyone moving about last night after we spoke?
The English colonel returned to his compartment. No one after that.
Did you leave the car at any time last night after Belgrade?
Well, I did go back to talk to Matteo, the attendant in the Athens-Paris car.
When was that?
Not long after 1.
How long were you gone?
A few minutes only. One of my bells rang. You remember, it was the American lady. She had rung several times.
I would like to take your fingerprints.
Of course, mademoiselle. This will mean so much trouble for the express.
I'll take that key, Mr. Hardman. If you don't give it to me, I can have a couple of the train's staff take it from you.
I'd like to see them try.
Would you really? What were you doing going through Michelle's belongings?
Your job.
You know I am assisting Monsieur Poirot.
Sure. Begin the interrogation.
What is your profession?
I'm a salesman. Typewriting ribbons.
Do you always travel first class, Monsieur Hartman?
Sure. The firm pays my traveling expenses.
Where is your destination?
Paris.
And from there?
New York.
What can you tell me about the murder?
Nothing at all.
That is a pity. What were you doing outside Monsieur Ratchet's window?
Okay, there were footprints there. Man's shoe, but not a large one. Size 7, maybe. I followed the tracks, then it looked like whoever made them put on some snowshoes and headed out over that deep snow near the back of the train.
I would like to take your fingerprints.
I guess it's okay.
Perhaps, Monsieur Hartman, you could tell me why I found a blackjack, or sap as I believe it's called, in your suitcase?
How do you know what it's called?
Crime is a hobby of mine.
Yeah? Well, why don't you try knitting instead? You people are serious about this investigation, aren't you?
Of course. You have heard of Monsieur Poirot?
Yeah, I have. I think I better come clean, or I could find myself in a lot of hot water here.
I would advise you to come clean.
Okay, I don't know anything, like I said. But I ought to know something. That's what makes me sore. I ought to. My passport's a bit of a bluff. That's who I really am.
Please explain.
I showed up at the appointed time. Ratchet put me wise to the situation.
The threatening letters.
Yeah, he showed me 2 of them.
Did Monsieur Ratchet seem alarmed by the letters?
Pretended not to be, but he was rattled all right.
What instructions did he give you?
I was to travel by the same train he did to Paris and see that nobody got him. That's the thing. I did travel by the same train, and in spite of me, somebody did get him. I feel sore about that. Doesn't look any too good for me.
Did he have any idea who the letters were from?
Well, Ratchet described him to me.
What?
Sure. Said he was a small man, dark, with a kind of womanish voice.
Did Monsieur Ratchet not tell you the man's name?
Nope.
Ratchet was Cassetti, the Armstrong murderer.
No kidding. Should have recognized him. I mean, I suppose I saw photos of him in the papers and everything. Well, that explains it. Cassetti made a lot of enemies in the American underworld. He often skipped when the heat was on, leaving his partners in crime to face the music. Some assassin finally caught up with him. Say, I've really fallen down on this thing. And with a famous detective like Mr. Poirot on the case, too. This won't do my rep any good with my boss, Mr. McNeil, if it gets back to him.
I'm in the same predicament, Monsieur Hartman, believe me.
You are? Well, that's good. I mean, bad for you, but... Say, listen. If we could keep the mess I've made out of this thing between ourselves...
I must tell Monsieur Poirot everything.
Oh, sure. I'll have to swallow my professional pride there, but if we can keep it on this side of the Atlantic, maybe, I'd really appreciate it.
I'll see what I can do. Do you know anyone connected with the Armstrong case who matches the description Monsieur Ratchet gave you?
Well, that's hard to say. They're mostly dead, aren't they?
Yes, Mrs. Armstrong, Colonel Armstrong, the nursemaid who threw herself out a window.
I remember now. The nursemaid was suspected. She killed herself even though she was eventually cleared.
Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm okay. Snow is very bright. So, yeah, that nursemaid was a foreigner, I think. Maybe she had some foreign relations or something. But that wasn't the first time Cassetti had run that kidnapping stunt. I bet there are lots of people had it in for him.
Please tell me your movements after dinner last night.
I played some cards with that Italian guy at the front on the coach. Then when people started turning in, I went back to my room. Stayed up all night. Had my door a bit ajar so I could keep watch. But nobody could see me. You get it?
I understand how it is done, yes. Could you see the attendant from that position?
Sure. He sits on that little seat right past my room.
Can you describe his movements?
Let's see. He answered a couple of bells after the snow stopped us. Went back into the rear coach for 10 minutes or so. Then there was a bell ringing like mad, and he came running back. I got a bit nervous over that, but it was just that talkative American dame raising hell about something or other. Bit later, he headed off to make somebody's bed up. Then he settled in.
Did you see anyone moving up and down the passage?
Nope.
Is there anyone on the train who can confirm your identity?
My credentials are taped to the bottom of the table in my compartment, along with my real passport. I'm sure you can find them.
Do you smoke, Monsieur Hartman?
Sure. I've got some cigarettes in my room. Come on by this evening after things quiet down. I can be far more entertaining than that mouse of a woman in your room.
No, thank you. Good day, monsieur. Pierre Michel's passport and an old photograph. I'll just borrow both of them. I would like to take your fingerprints.
What is that you say? I protest. I have nothing to do with this crime.
Everyone must be fingerprinted.
Refuse? No, no, of course not. Let's get it over with.
I won't find... Do you have a plan to the Athens-Paris coach?
Si, señorita.
Which rooms are occupied in this car?
The Greek doctor is the only passenger. He is in room 13. I have taken room 15 there to sleep in, and room 16 for my equipment. I hope it is all right. Pierre Michel is using room 11, the chef de cuisine is in 9, Lucien the waiter is in 1-2, the engineer is resting in 10 when not attending to the boiler, the fireman rests in 3-4.
What equipment?
I am a ham radio operator. Usually I carry the equipment in the baggage car. There is no time to use it when I'm on duty. And anyway, no power. But when we were stopped so suddenly, I thought to check it and found my telegraph key destroyed. I don't understand it. It was packed carefully. I brought the rest here to my room to keep it safe.
Did anyone pass between this car and the Calais coach last night?
Only Pierre. He came through and we talked for a few minutes about the snow and what it will do to the schedule.
When was this?
Sometime after 1 a.m. A few minutes only. We talked for 10 minutes or so. Then Michel fancied he heard a bell. He opened the doors between the two coaches and we both heard it plainly. A bell, ringing repeatedly. Michel ran to answer it.
You boarded the train in Belgrade?
Si, señorita.
Why were you so late? Your passenger must have boarded by himself, and you yourself almost missed the train.
But this is not so. I was preparing my car as it was being attached. I myself welcomed the Greek doctor and showed him to compartment 13.
I would like to fingerprint you.
I, señorita?
Everyone.
Oh, then si, I will submit.
That will be all. I would like to fingerprint you.
Eğer mecbursan.
I still need to ask you some questions about last night.
At your service, dear young lady. But I know nothing.
Did you see anyone leave the train last night?
No. But as I have told you, we were busy with the boiler. The pressure must be kept up for the light and heat.
Did you see anyone get on the train?
In Belgrade, there was a single passenger only for the Athens-Paris coach. No one at the other stops that I saw.
Can you describe this passenger?
He was small, dark. A doctor, I think Michel said.
No one else?
Well, Mateo, of course, the Athens-Paris attendant. Not to speak ill of the crew, but he was very late getting aboard. We left the station only moments later.
I would like to fingerprint you.
Anything you require. However, if you're planning to smear that typewriting ribbon on my fingers, it is unnecessary. My fingers are black from coal dust already.
That will be all, Tayyip. I'll put this into my scrapbook so I can take a closer look at it later. Monsieur Poirot.
His menu seems to overemphasize meat pieces. The butcher, speaking, has some even more complimentary than usual today. Worse than avalanches and murder, beyond the sentence. Why does it not surprise me? What do you know of Strauss's movement right now?
And that is everything I have discovered so far.
We progress, mademoiselle. Now, let us see what we can learn.
The timetable is very complete now.
Oh, yes, it is essential to the understanding of the crime. Study it carefully.
We have many alibis we can use to eliminate suspects.
Yes, too many. Compare them all. Look for discrepancies. We must be certain that they do not leak the water.
I believe I have collected all the passports.
Très bien, mademoiselle. You have done well.
I think I have secured all the fingerprints.
Très bien, mademoiselle. You have done well.
Madame Hubbard heard a woman in Monsieur Ratchet's room.
Wait, and about the time you heard the noise and saw the woman in the scarlet kimono. So, does a woman speak to Monsieur Ratchet, murder him, drop a handkerchief with the letter H, then scurry off down the corridor in a scarlet kimono? Or does Madame Hubbard hallucinate a woman's voice as well as the man in her room?
The valet masterman says Ratchet took less than his normal sleeping draught.
So, instead of a comatose Ratchet who would not struggle when the knife began its work, we have a Ratchet who might cry out.
But after the cry, I heard Ratchet tell Michelle that there was nothing wrong. Monsieur McQueen saw the woman in the scarlet kimono.
But not enough to identify her. And he says he saw Michelle coming from the direction of the salon car, or at least someone in an attendant's uniform.
Colonel Arbuthnot saw the attendant and thinks he caught the scent of a woman.
Ah, the scent of a woman. You have found a romantic streak I would not have suspected one so stolid to possess.
Hildegard Schmidt saw an attendant leaving a compartment.
Oui, one of the middle rooms. Either Ratchet's or Madame Hubbard's. And his description? No, it is not Pierre Michel, this small dark man with a moustache who speaks in the high voice.
No, but he matches the description Ratchet gave Hardman of his enemy. Both Madame Hubbard and Mademoiselle Olsen confirm the connecting door was locked.
An attendant's passkey opens even connecting doors, I think, so I am not so baffled by that locked door.
Colonel Arbuthnot saw Monsieur Hardman watching a corridor from his room.
Monsieur Hartmann's door opens to the right. So unfortunately he could see little of the corridor, but he would have seen if anyone entered the Calais coach from the Athens-Paris coach.
The steak knife I found by the cliff was clean. No blood or fingerprints.
It is a nuisance, that knife. On the face of it, it is of no importance. And yet, someone has taken the trouble to try and fling it over a cliff.
Hardman's actions were very suspicious.
And the key he discovers in Michel's clothing that opens the door to the security room in the baggage car is suspicious as well.
McQueen is the son of the district attorney involved in the Armstrong case.
Pardon, district attorney? What is that?
Some sort of police official, I believe. Princess Dragomirov was Sonia Armstrong's godmother.
Oui, it is coincidence, or something more. Merci, mademoiselle. Unfortunately, the report it is not yet complete. We are now armed with much more additional knowledge than before. Continue the investigation, and do not be afraid to go over the ground you have already covered.
The key fit perfectly. I think I heard a click. It's open. I'll put this into my scrapbook so I can take a closer look at it later. It's locked fast. Well, what do we have here? Oh my! Just what is all this for? Crime et punition, Géographie Européenne, Introduction à la science. Interesting selection. It looks like someone had a meal here recently. It's a makeshift bed, but who could possibly be using it? I'd better put the lid back on for appearances.